going to show you how to fill in some of your work with wrap and turn short rows, denoted by the number 2 and the number 3. In this instance, I've created the top of a swimsuit cover-up, and because I used a yarn over knit, yarn over increase, it's come down to a point, and I want for my garment to have a straight edge at the bottom. And so after finishing this portion, I'm going to begin wrap and turn short rows on the wearer's right side, where my yarn is already ready and waiting for me to go. And then once I finish with this side, I'll go back over to the very other side, which will at that point be here, and I'll work the wrap and turn short rows here on the purl side, and then I'll be able to finish the rest of the garment with a straight edge. So let me show you the one side that I already have completed so that you can see what I'm after. You can see this portion that comes down to a point, and at this point I will have none of this, and so we're going to start creating the portion that fills in this area here. And as you can see, it's a nice clean line on both sides, and it appears to just continue on downward. On the other side, you can see the seam here, and by doing the wrap and turn, you don't end up with any holes in your work, which theoretically could mirror something like these eyelets, but they're not quite as pretty. They just look like gaps unless you do wrap and turn. So let's get started on that, and I'll show you how this is done. So here's my piece of work. Again, this is the wearer's front right, and I'm on the right side. So in my pattern, I called for slipping the first stitch, and we're just going to go ahead and do that. Now on this next stitch, we want to wrap and turn. So what I do is bring my yarn forward, I slip the next stitch onto the right needle, put the yarn back to the back, and slip that second stitch back over to the left needle. And then I turn my work and simply purl back to the beginning, which in this case is just one stitch. Oops. And then I turn my work back around. Our second stitch is wrapped. It may be a little difficult to see, but here you can see the wrap on the second stitch as opposed to the next one, which has yet to be wrapped. We're just going to go in sequence, going one stitch further every time and purling back until we've wrapped all 45 stitches on the needle. So again, I'm slipping my first stitch purlwise because that's what I've decided to do in my pattern. I'm going to knit one, and now it's time to wrap the next stitch. I bring my yarn forward, slip that stitch over to the right needle, put my yarn in the back, bring that stitch back to the left needle, and turn my work and purl back. That wrap makes sure that you don't have gaps in your work. And turn my work back around. So I wrapped 3 stitches. It's time to knit 3, wrap 4. Let me slip this. 1, 2, 3. You can see there would be a gap there if I didn't wrap the next stitch. So I bring my yarn forward, slip that stitch over to the right needle, put my yarn in back, take the stitch back, and turn my work, purl back to the beginning. Your directions will say knit. On this one it will be knit 4, wrap and turn. Let's see, we've got our wrap on the 4th stitch here. Your wraps will begin showing up lower. So this is knit 4, wrap and turn, 2, oops, I almost split that. 3, 4. Now it's time to wrap and turn. Our yarn's in back, we bring it to the front, slip that stitch to the right needle, yarn back to the back, and turn our work and purl back to the beginning. This goes pretty quickly. I'm trying to slow it down a little bit for demonstration. We're creating that triangular shape that will allow us to have that straight edge. So now it's knit 5, and as you can see as I come up there, if you feel like you've maybe lost your place, you're going to notice a gap in the work. Okay, you can see on the needle there's just slightly more space between the 5th and the 6th stitch, and that means we need to wrap the 6th one. If you've lost count, that's kind of a good way to remind yourself. Knit 5, now it's time to wrap and turn. Our yarn's in the back because we're knitting. We bring it to the front, slide that stitch over to the right needle, put the yarn to the back, and slip it back on to the left needle. So we've just wrapped the 6th stitch and we purl back. So in essence, you just continue doing the wrap and turn until all stitches required have been wrapped, and then move on as your pattern instructs. Very simple process. Sounds a lot harder than it is. These wraps are not going to be picked up later. Wrap and turn is often used in socks and for shaping a heel or a toe, but as you can see here, it's beginning to, I hope you can see based on, here's the point that we're trying to fill in, and we already have a little bit of a triangular shape. And if you look, here's where we've begun joining. There aren't holes in the work. It's just nice and neat and clean. So that's all there is to it with wrap and turn on the knit side. And in another segment, I'll show you the wrap and turn on a purl side. But I hope you've found this useful. If you have, you know, please hit like or feel free to subscribe. I'd love to have you. When doing short rows on the purl side, the process is almost identical. in my pattern, as I said before, I am slipping the first stitch of each row so that I have an edge where I can pick up stitches later to put the front and the back together. So as in the other side that I did, we're going to slip the first stitch, and then rather than bringing the yarn to the front, we put it to the back, pick up that stitch, the second one, put the yarn back to the front, and slip that stitch back onto the needle. And then we turn our work around, keeping the yarn in the back, and we knit the last stitch. Turn the work back around. Let me get my needle out of here. So we have wrapped the second stitch. So now we're going to slip one, purl one, put the yarn to the back, pick up that third stitch, yarn back to the front, and take that third stitch back and turn our work again, making sure to keep the yarn in the back. And then we knit back. Your pattern might tell you to, knit 4, wrap and turn. As I said before, I am purling, or I'm slipping that first stitch. So for the sake of demonstration, I am going to just say that I'm knitting. So this time we'll knit 3, or purl 3, 2, 3, and now we're going to wrap the fourth. So we put our yarn to the back, slip the stitch to the right needle, bring the yarn back to the front, and take that stitch back. And keeping the yarn in the back, we turn our work and we knit back to the beginning. So if I've knit 3 back, that means on the return trip I will purl 4. Oops, I got the collar on that one. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now time to wrap and turn. So the yarn goes to the back. Slip that stitch, yarn to the front, and place that stitch back on the right needle. And we just continue in this fashion for as many stitches as your pattern requires. It's quite simple and useful for all kinds of shaping, and it's good to know how to do this on both the knit and the purl sides. So happy knitting to you. I'll see you next time on Snowy Owl Knits, and thanks again for being here.